Welcome to booksonline.club. I'm your host, Chuck Marundi. And today on this video, I want to share with you a video book review of our featured book titled The Master Guide to Optimal Health the Natural Way. In this video, which is really part 2 of the book review of The Master Guide to Optimal Health the Natural Way, I want to look at a very important chapter. I think one that is a little bit shocking, at least it will be to most people. So I'm going to take you to part 1 of the book, and we're going to move ahead to chapter 2, The Evil Conspiracy of the Meat Industry. A dark conspiracy has concealed the truth from you and me, and from all consumers in America. The meat industry doesn't actually care if you discover their conspiracy, as long as you keep buying their products. In other words, you can be an informed consumer as long as you are an obedient consumer who can be led around on a leash and keep giving them your money and keep eating their unhealthy products. They have conspired to deceive you through decades of subtle misrepresentations and deceptive labeling. While much of what they do does not involve overt lies, less than the whole truth can be a very effective way to disguise treachery. As I taught my own children long ago, an exaggeration or withholding the whole truth can often have the same result as a bold lie if done with bad intentions. To this end, they co-opted federal agencies who are supposed to protect consumers, and they build a deep network of corporate, financial, and media affiliates to control how you make decisions so that even if you learn about their massive ploy, either you won't believe it or you won't change your behavior, even when faced with the knowledge that their products are dangerous to your health and dangerous to your children's health. American consumers, like people in other nations, are easily manipulated and easily fooled. Perhaps this is an understatement of human history, that people are easily manipulated and easily fooled, even when they know they are being deceived and that the consequences are likely to be to their own detriment. It is truly one of the greatest human tragedies that people will create a lifestyle that they know can eventually kill them or turn them into brain-dead vegetables. Millions continue to smoke cigarettes, knowing they may get lung cancer and suffer a gruesome death. Billions around the world continue to eat potato chips, junk food, and guzzle sodas with massive quantities of sugar, knowing they are obese because they live on junk food. I could go on and on about the self-destructive and suicidal inclinations of humans, but you know all of this. I hope and pray this book will wake some people up from the death walk they are now on. I don't know if the facts and explanations in this chapter will motivate people to change their eating habits, but I hope so. So let's dig in to this incredibly important subject. In order to understand the extraordinary profit-motivated lengths to which the industry has gone, let's review the life cycle of beef. It's such a distasteful history, I would suggest you read this chapter on an empty stomach. Or if you're listening to it, you, in the audio book, maybe on an empty stomach too. What is the process of bringing meat to your kitchen table? The meat industry's modus operandi. Here's the Cliff Notes version of how the meat industry feeds and nurtures cattle from birth and processes and labels the meat for sale in your grocery store. Calves are born on ranches somewhere in the U.S., and they are raised on grass until they're 6 to 8 months old. Then they are sold as weanlings to someone who grazes them on grass, hence their other nickname as grass calves. They might be grazed in Nebraska, eastern Montana, or in the Texas Panhandle. When they are about 1.5 years old, they are sold to a feedlot. At the feedlot, a crowded and unsanitary environment, and an egregious example of animal cruelty, the cows are fed the cheapest feed, like corn that is grown for that purpose, as fast and cheap as possible. We have no way of knowing if pesticides are used for the mass production of this corn. Finishing completes the process of stuffing the cows with cheap grain and also pumping them full of hormones so they will gain as much weight, i.e. fat, at the end as possible. There is a party line for the use of hormone injections, and there is a lot of data that is very bad. You can read the detailed results in the footnotes to this book. On the appointed day, the cows go to one of the federally approved slaughter plants in the U.S. There are only 4 major plants that slaughter massive numbers of cattle, and they control the meat processing industry in the U.S. market, with the exception of a few small independents who are barely hanging on as viable businesses. These massive slaughterhouses can butcher as many as 29,000 steers or heifers in a single day. These large slaughterhouses do not take the time to dry age the carcasses for a period of days, which has been done for thousands of years and which all wild game hunters still do today. Instead, after butchering the animals, they box and package the primal cuts right away. Dry aging the meat is a very important step that should never be left out, because dry aging is a natural intervention for the growth of pathogens, in other words, bacterial microbes. When it is not done, you have the perfect environment for rapidly growing bacterial microbes on the meat. To minimize the health risk of these pathogens they created in this process of mass production, they add another step. They treat the meat with antimicrobial chemicals like anhydrous ammonia, another health-endangering process. One industry expert states that anhydrous ammonia turns living soil into dead dirt, but it's the cheapest form of nitrogen, and it's what a lot of farmers are putting on the soil. It also kills pathogens on your meat. But what does it do to your stomach, your gut, and your digestive system? Did the meat industry ever tell you that they would put chemicals like this in your meat to kill pathogens that their own processes helped to create in the first place? Processing the meat includes another step they certainly don't share on their labels. They import meat from as many as 30 countries outside the U.S., where there may be few health regulations and where no one knows how the animals were fed and raised, and they mix that imported meat with your hamburger. A new law is coming out with new regulations that may change disclosure requirements, but that remains to be seen. In the case of sausage or hamburger, they can also mix in pelletized pink slime. Pink slime is the outer layer of the carcass that they trim off because it is the ugly parts, and it's also the primary place pathogens start growing. Believe it or not, pink slime has an official designated name assigned by the meat industry, and that name is euphemistically called lean, finely textured beef. How's that for deceptive labeling? Why do they call the pink slime lean? They take these trimmings and burn off the fat, and what's left is lean, but it's not necessarily muscle or edible meat, but more likely to be connective tissue and other gross parts you would never choose to consume on purpose if you knew this was in your hamburger. Then they pelletize this gross excess and sell it to hamburger and sausage producers. Do you see why I use the word misrepresentation and deceptive branding? And guess what? The USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, allows the industry to then call this grotesquely dangerous package hamburger. so they can sell it to you without any proper disclosures. They package the meat under the branded names of the companies that sell you the meat. Under the laws and regulations in the U.S., the package does not have to state that it was boxed rather than properly dry hung, that it was washed with antimicrobial chemicals, that a percentage of it came from outside the U.S., nor do they have to tell you on the label that pink slime was mixed into your meat. Here's the shocker. The packaging may actually say, all natural, grass-fed beef, under USDA and FDA regulations. If this doesn't make you mistrust the USDA and the FDA, I reckon you'll eat anything they tell you is safe. This beef makes up about 85% of the beef butchered in the U.S., and this is what is sold in all the big grocery stores. Since the big processing houses package and brand the hamburger for all the food chains, the hamburger in many stores will be the same hamburger, only with different packaging and labels. This is what you've been eating and what you've been feeding to your children. Let's contrast the corporate government meat conglomerates with the small independent ranchers who are outside the favor of our federal government and the large economies of scale that such operations engender in the name of greed and billions in profit. The rancher does not sell his 8-month-old calf, instead feeding it grass for another year until the calf is about a year and 8 months old. This is where you may see the term grass finished, which means the rancher keeps the cattle on grass or grass hay all the way to the day they are butchered. If the rancher wants to improve the quality and nutritional value of the meat, including good marbling, he will finish their grass diet with high-quality grains and supplements. If cattle do not get essential nutrients, you can be sure that that will be reflected in the meat you eat. This footnote explains the basic nutritional needs of healthy cattle. And if you have the paperback or the Kindle version, you can read the footnotes to this chapter. This all costs the ranchers more money. Never forget that you get what you pay for. The big four slaughter plants can sell beef for less than $2 a pound. But a private rancher who does everything right must get over $5 a pound to break even, at least as of this writing. Of course, prices may go up in the future. Next time you shop for cheap hamburger or any kind of cheap beef, think about that. Do you really want the cheapest meat? To sell the beef to nationwide retailers or directly to you, the rancher cannot go to one of the large conglomerates in the U.S. Those massive plants are all owned by the Big Four, and the Big Four won't accept beef from these small ranchers at the price they need to recover their costs. The rancher's only option is to get his cattle butchered at an independent small plant. But these plants are few in number, and the small rancher does not butcher thousands of animals a day, only dozens or maybe just a few. All slaughterhouses, even the small independents, must be USDA inspected and approved. Does this sound like the fox guarding the henhouse? It certainly is. It's called crony capitalism, and it's about as corrupt as it gets. But in this case, your health means absolutely nothing to the government that taxes you, so it can then participate in mass consumer deception. Unfortunately, most of the small independent slaughterhouses have already been forced out of business. When the rancher finds a small plant to slaughter his cattle, so he can sell direct to consumers or to small independent retailers, the plant doesn't box and package the beef immediately, as is the industry standard. Instead, the plant hangs the carcasses and lets them dry. This is done for a period of days, typically 7 to 14 days, but not longer than 21 days. And this dry hanging avoids creating the ideal environment for the growth of microbes and the need to wash the meat with antimicrobial chemicals. The result of dry hanging is threefold. 1, the enzymes begin to break down the muscle fiber so the meat becomes more tender. 2, some moisture evaporates from the meat, and this means the flavor becomes more robust and a little more intense. And 3, you get a safer meat because while the meat hangs in the cooler, the science shows that any potential salmonella and E. coli do not survive the time the meat is hanging in the cooler. In contrast, the meat industry, the Big Four, they don't do any of this. And so private rancher beef handled like this is far healthier, more flavorful, and certainly safer to consume. You can imagine how all of this means the small rancher's cost per pound of beef is going to be substantially above the industry standard. A rancher who has 10 or 20 cattle, butchered after feeding them correctly and caring for them for 18 months, and has the butchering plant dry hang for 7 to 14 days, will have substantially higher costs than the Walmarts of the world who purchase beef or hamburger under their own brand from one of the Big Four. Let's jump ahead one page because there's something else I want you to know. And it's under the section called grass-fed and all-natural. Consumers, myself included, tend to assume that we know the practical meaning of words and phrases in all U.S. product markets. We are terribly inept at differentiating marketing language from reality. Because of such assumptions, we have grown incredibly naive about how corporate sales strategies have devolved into deeper levels of dark manipulation and deceptive advertising. Most of us have assumed that grass-fed cows means several good things for our health, including, in this little bullet list, that the cows grazed in luscious fields of gorgeous organic fields of grass, that the grass was growing in nutrient-rich soil, that there was plenty of water for the grass all year, that the cows had acres upon acres to graze and consume all this rich green grass, that they grazed on this grass their whole lives from birth to the butcher's table, that the fields were never sprayed with pesticides, that the cow's diet was supplemented with good organic feed, that the cows were not recklessly fattened with unhealthy practices, that the cows were not pumped full of antibiotics, that the meat packers did not do anything to compromise the natural health of the cows, and that no one in the entire chain of meat processing added anything that would be health endangering to us. Well, all this meat that you're buying at the grocery stores does not. When you look at packages of meat in your grocery store and it says organic, and there's usually several brands of organic hamburger, for example, folks, there are so many layers of deception and misrepresentation. It's unbelievable. Well, we're going to stop there because there's so much more to share on this, even in this chapter and the entire book. And I hope you'll spend some time in this book. I think it'll really benefit you, and I think you'll enjoy it. I want to encourage you to go to booksonline.club. And if you feel so inclined, purchase this book for yourself in either the paperback edition on Amazon or the audiobook version, which is available on Amazon, or the ebook edition, which is available right here on booksonline.club. I'm Chuck Marundi, and it's been enjoyable sharing this little review with you. I look forward to seeing you in the next book review.